It's not sane. It is just not sane. But that's why you have come here, and welcome everybody to the desert of the real. Welcome to Aeon Byte. Welcome to the machine, my son, and the means to escape it. We're writing our own gospel. We're living our own myth. We're running with those searching for the truth, and we are avoiding those who have found it. My name is Miguel Connor, and I am your Pompatus of Gnosis, that madman across the waters. So good to see you peeps who have materialized on this Saturday, you spiritual entrepreneurs, you veterans of 1,000 psychic wars, and you modern day Tom Sawyers, your mind not for rent to any god or government. I hope you're having a good Easter weekend if you do celebrate it. If not, I hope you're just having a nice break on this Saturn day. Here in the Midwest, the weather is finally warming up, so you know what that means. It's yacht rock time. Yes, time to whip up the Chris Christopherson and the Michael McDonald and What a Fool Believes or something like that. Yeah, that's our daring gnosis in 2025. But anyway, it is good to see everybody here, and we got a really cool and special show today. We are joined for the second time by Scott R. Jones to discuss a book that really moved me and influenced me, and that is Drill. Scott, thanks for coming back to the show after a long pause.
Miguel, thanks for having me. This is already great. Let's get started.
Let's do this. Yeah, we're going to move some mountains, man. And with us, too, it's always good to have the Moondog Vance. Vance, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm fine. It's always a good day when Carrie doesn't get pig blood dumped all over her. They had a happy ending.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, these days it would. What if it was a high school? It'd probably be run by PETA. So what would they dump on her? Tomato juice?
I don't know. Cat clawed clippings.
Oh well, it's a classic scene for those of you who are watching on video, whether you're live or not. And again, good to see Graham in the chat room, Anon Almost, Dragon Sage, and everybody else. We already got a good crowd amassing today. As always, if you do have any questions for Scott or complaints against Vance or I, please super chat them so we can separate them from all the chat, and we will get to you. And as always, please support AM Biden any way you can. Like, subscribe, donations, whatever you can do to keep this Red Pill cafeteria open. Keep the lights of the pleroma on. Not much else. I'll do some housekeeping later, but I really want to get into Drill, a very powerful book that moved me. I think I read it, Scott, in 2 sittings. In fact, I hate that feeling. Last night it's 1 in the morning, and I'm like, motherfucker. It's like, I want to put this down. I'm so exhausted, but I want to get to the next part. So, yes, for the audience, it's a Gnostic fiction, without a doubt. It's certainly one of those meta hyper autobiographical books in the vein of Philip K. Dick, William Burroughs, Grant Morrison, Jorge Luis Borges, the authors that in this show we have covered so much. And it's a powerful, very layered, surreal, magical realism book that you will enjoy, and hits a lot of different themes all over, philosophical, social, and so forth. But at its core, it's got a very powerful Gnostic message. So yeah, Scott, thanks for bringing us to the world, and maybe tell us, how did you get this? How did you come to the right Drill?
How I came to write Drill? Drill kind of jumped me in the midst of writing another novel due to life events which are in some ways described within the novel. Drill. Drill is basically almost an autoimmune reaction that I had to psychic events in my life, and as a result, it came out very quick. It was a very quick write. I usually take anywhere between 1.5 to 2 years to write a novel. This came out in 8 months. So it was pretty swift for me, due to, I think, the timeliness of the nature. Because what Drill is it's the textual leg of a 3-legged magical operation that I've been running for the last little while. Since starting the writing of the book, the operation, the curse that it enables, and because we're definitely dealing with some inimical magic here. This is dark stuff that I got myself into. But yeah, it's part of a support structure for a larger construction, if that makes any sense at all.
It does. That's the part I was going to say. It is definitely a sigil spell. It's an exorcism.
Yeah.
It's a coping skill. It's therapy. And again, you can easily compare it to what Philip K. Dick was doing in Valis, and other novels where they're trying to layer these different realities to find answers. At the same time, they're trying to find some sort of closure in their lives, but of course they all know there is no closure, just like there's no healing with trauma. You can alchemize it and
Yeah,
send it to the world to help others, but the heart of darkness is still there, right, Scott?
that's true enough. I mean, that was really my one of my goals in writing drill was to perform that alchemy. To take this, incredibly, potent source of, I'll just say it, hatred, right? That I had been, I don't know whether you want to say gifted with, but certainly it had come unto me that I had it and I had to do something with it. And in order to heal, I felt, drill was definitely a part of the healing process. Am I different now than when I started? Yes. Do I look at those life events in a different light? Absolutely. But it's also had other stranger effects in the noosphere and in the world that we live, which is, as a piece of magic, that's what you want to affect, right? And drill is my great work. I don't know that it's my greatest work yet. Maybe I'll write something better. God help me if I ever write anything more personal.
Yeah, you lay all your cards on the table, that's for sure.
Well, I felt that sort of abject honesty was necessary to hooking the reader in to the severity of the message. Some of the messages that I wanted to convey. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there's a part in your novel, and I underline many of your good quotes, but you're talking about your dad, and again, we'll get to that because I feel this novel is sort of your love letter to your dad, as strange as it sounds, but there are other instances, and I had to write mine to my dad, who now we have the best relationship. He's gone, but the old, I alchemized the old drunk Irish, brutally violent man, and now I love the guy because we work things out through, again, same thing, sigils, writings, meditations, and I saw the trauma going through his life all the way back, and I realized, as you say, we'll get to the mind parasites. It traps. It's generational. It traps all of us.
Absolutely, it's generational. Yeah.
But you write, there's this beautiful line, and you said, "Hate is parasite, not the host." And I remember that's a beautiful, because that's when he's accusing you, of course, of sending demons to your mother, which is
sure.
Yeah, it's it's quite a journey that you went through. I felt you went through a lot.
Yeah, thank you. And drill was my means by which I process it. Mm-hmm.
Why don't we start first with the title? What is drill for the audience?
The sort of conceit, the fictional conceit of the book is that the universe itself is a sort of a drill-shaped structure, right? That our reality itself is one of many, but they're all drilling through a higher dimensional sort of inframatter, which I term the body of God. There are individuals who basically maintain and direct this work, and they are called sappers. So sappers are the fictional characters in my book, which the auto-fictional and biographical characters meet up with in order to accomplish the ending of the storyline, basically, of drill, but also to put it out into the world in a way that it continues to function. It continues to burrow through that inframatter, and in this case, it then transforms and becomes burrowing into the mind of the reader, right, into the consciousness of the planet, which is what I'm going for reasons we'll probably get to.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it definitely sounds like the virus, the good virus of Philip K. Dick. What did he call it? Oh my God, Invalis.
The good virus.
Yeah, Vance. What was the virus? The Nag Hammadi library was this sort of information virus.
Zebra.
Well, Zebra was the emitter, and there was Valis.
I'm trying to remember
somebody in the chat. I know there was the plasmate. Was it something like
plasmate?
Yeah. So yeah, that certainly relates to it. And so you yourself, and we've discussed this, but of course what you're saying, you're preaching to the choir, to the audience. You see reality as sort of a simulation, or like we say, a layered emanating simulation.
Yeah, emanating's the word, I think, for me, in that it seems to me that it's all built up out of the smaller units, right? And that there is an element here which didn't originate here, and that's consciousness, right? We've basically downloaded. I know it's a common term to use these days, but it is the most apt, right? I believe that our existence here is a kind of a piloting of these time suits, as Grant Morrison called them, right? And that we somehow download, and our consciousness resides, in a sort of zone around our body mind, and that consciousness at the end of life obviously has no anchor anymore, and leaves for the greater consciousness beyond. But yeah, that's my take on it.
It's a good take, yeah, and we'll get into we should just get into the Archon powers, but let's relate it to you. Your story of being enslaved really is about being enslaved by an egregore, a Castañeda's flyer, this entity that eats the louche today of 8 million people. That's no small amount. I mean, when you think like that's a lot of people, and that is the Jehovah Witness cult. Tell us about your life there, which from the beginning you came out of this in the simulation as a slave to Jehovah.
Yeah, already. My parents basically signed me up real early. I can remember being it must have been anywhere between 5 and 7 years old, where I wrote up a little contract in crayon saying that I was going to be a pioneer and preach the good news for Jehovah when I grew up. This was my little promise to them, right? I mean, that's how indoctrinated they make their kids. Wow. No blame to my mother and father at the time, who were simply doing as best as they thought they were doing the best they could, right? So it's really it took a long while for me to basically come to the conception that I was in fact enslaved, and I didn't get out until my late 20s. That's a long time. I'm married at the age of 21, right, to a 19-year-old, which happens all the time in the Jehovah's Witnesses, because that's just how it goes. They're very sexually repressed. Well, they're repressed in a lot of ways, but sexually definitely. So young Jehovah's Witnesses can't wait to tie the knot, because of course they've had absolutely no experience, right, and are quite willing to fall in with just about anybody if it means they're going to get laid. That's a bit of a digression. But there it is. So
you can't even spank the monkey. They frown upon that, right?
Well, exactly. And that is part of the Jehovah entity's control system, right? It's a multi-layered system through the entirety of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society organization and the Jehovah's Witnesses. But it is, as you say, 8 million, actually 8.5 million at this count. Wow. 8.5 million people are thinking about this entity on a daily, almost constant basis, policing their own thoughts for this thing, and policing each other for this thing, sacrificing themselves for this thing, sacrificing their children through, the horrific acts of, pedophilia that occur.
No, dear.
Within the group. I mean, we could fill entire hours with the sins of this organization. But my point with Drill, and my goal with Drill, was to write something that acted as a memetic weapon against the God itself. I figure you can go after the organization, you can try to break the people free, and with varying levels of success, right? But I thought, really, if you want this thing to end, you gotta destroy the head. The body will die.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the goal of drill. And it uses memetic warfare to do it, in that, when you read drill, I am basically uploading into you the countervirus,
Mm-hmm.
or at least something that's going to disrupt the feed, right, and prevent this entity from getting its hooks into you. Which it still does. It's their preaching work is no longer as successful as it once was. Mm-hmm. It's mainly used as another system of control for those who are already in. But they still have converts. They still baptize a couple 100,000 a year.
Wow.
So, but but by the same token, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people are waking up within the cult and seeing it for what it was, and going through the deconstruction process, right, and coming out the other side, ex-Jehovah's Witnesses like me. Yeah. Took some time to get there, though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the deprogramming is going to be a lifelong process. The trauma healing, again, but you got to do it. It's not like there's any other choice. And as they say, there's no guarantees. Yeah, and it must be powerful magic, because I had no idea that the Jehovah Witnesses were founded by Freemasons. So they got all power.
That is, I don't know the veracity of that from my own experience, but yeah, I have heard that. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
No, not at all.
It wouldn't surprise me at all. It's, but yeah, that's that group.
And then the JWs wanted to play nice with Hitler too.
Yep, there was a period in their history where their leadership was basically very fawning towards the Hitler's regime, and when Hitler basically gave them the cold shoulder, they turned around and wrote a scathing diatribe against which they published in Germany at the time, against Hitler. They turned around when they weren't accepted by Hitler. They rejected him. Mm-hmm. Right. And I'm sure that had at least something to do with the amount of innocent, Jehovah's Witnesses who got sent to the chambers, and, and sent to the camps. Just awful an awful and sordid history, which, anybody who wants to take a deep dive into JW history is going to find some incredible stuff. Honestly, in my opinion, the weirdest, largest, and most destructive and dangerous cult on the planet.
Really? Wow.
I think. Yeah. Of the North American cults, I don't know if there are, others worldwide, and you could argue Catholics as well. But, in terms of...
Even over Scientologists?
Oh, yeah. Well, Scientologists are not nearly as plentiful as Jehovah's Witnesses.
That's true.
Not nearly. I don't know how many, but it's in the hundreds of thousands for Scientology, and we're talking millions worldwide for the Witnesses. Mm-hmm.
They don't bother you on but they don't bother you on a Saturday afternoon about the end of the world, Vance.
Yeah.
And I mean, I had friends who were Jehovah's Witnesses. My old sister-in-law was, and you just live with them, and then they complain about you celebrating Christmas and yada yada yada. But I know. I always thought it was so strange that the two most famous Jehovah Witnesses in the world were Michael Jackson and Prince. It's like, how did you keep doing
That's right.
How did you, I mean, two of the most sexual, androgynous beings in history.
Yeah. Well, you're born into it, right? I mean, I think that was the case for Mr. Jackson. He was born into it. I don't know what it was for Prince. I think he converted at some point.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, from my memory, anyway. Now, of course, we have Serena Williams and
I didn't know that. Wow.
And Damon Wayans of the Wayans brothers, and there's still celebrity JWs out there, but of course they get the easy ticket.
I'm sure
they get the fun ride, right? they get the fun ride.
Yeah, with all that money.
Nobody troubles them about anything they're up to.
Exemptions, yes.
That's probably how Prince got away with, doing what he did. So
Yeah.
got I can write you $1 million check to tell you to shut up. Very simple.
Yeah.
A watchtower, we'll go with that.
Is there a hierarchy to the JWs? Is there like a fearless leader and a council?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There is. It's actually a team of leaders. They're called the governing body, which is a very corporate term. They adopted this back in the 1930s. The governing body is currently, I think it's at 13 individuals. I could be wrong. Could be 11. They add, people die and then new ones are added, and sometimes they'll just add a new one on the fly. But from there, then you have the helpers to the governing body. That's another level of leadership. And then you've got Bethel leadership, which is basically the folks at the compound in upstate New York. Warwick, I believe. Warwick, New York. And then, of course, you've got circuit overseers, which are sort of like bishops in that they have control over a certain region of kingdom halls. And then within the kingdom halls themselves, you've got the elders. And then beneath them are the ministerial servants, which are basically helpers to the elders. And then you've got the rank and file, the sheep, as they like to call themselves.
Interesting. And your story, tell the audience about why you decided to leave in the process. Obviously, JWs have different theology. I believe they think Jesus is the Archangel Michael.
Sure.
There's no eternal damnation. I think there's just extinction.
Yeah.
It's like, they'll just.
It's pretty brutal. It's pretty
like
brutal.
Metal, like cool, brutal.
No, it's, straight up extinction. I always reasoned when I was still in the cult, Jehovah's Witness, that, extinction was better. But at least with hell, you kind of know where you're at.
And you can get used to the heat.
You realize it's about realizing the I don't know. I just feel like at least even with the torment, you would know that you were where you were supposed to be.
You would exist.
You would exist still, But exactly. No, they. Oh, sorry. What was the original question?
What made you? Well, I was kind of tied in because obviously I read your book. Right. One of the big Jehovah Witnesses theories is, of course, Armageddon, the end of the world. That's their selling point, and that's where you found that was sort of where your cognitive dissonance began to melt away.
Oh, absolutely. I could not countenance the idea of a God, using this particular method for righting the wrongs of the world. Here we have they claim themselves as, the most peaceful and loving and respectful, nonviolent people on the planet. Mm-hmm. But their solution is cosmic war. Their solution is, God entities descending from another dimension with hosts of angels, right? And basically the mass slaughter of most of the planet. Mm. Everybody who isn't a Jehovah's Witness is doomed, and you can bring this up with them, and that will make them very uncomfortable because you're talking about what they actually believe is that genocide is good in some cases, in this particular case where, God is basically taking his vengeance upon, their God anyway. Jehovah is taking his vengeance upon the populace of Earth.
No, really. Worse than that. He's not fighting Satan. He's not fighting Satan. It's just
Satan gets chained up for a little while, mm-hmm. And then at the end of 1,000 years of peaceful existence under God's rulership, and Jesus and the 144,000 and the governing body, they'll be there too.
Of course.
They'll get raptured up when the time is right. They're. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought.
The end of the world. Give us the Michael Bay scenario.
Yeah, that's that's what they're looking at, is that all these individuals are basically going to descend here from heaven and destroy everyone. Satan's going to get chained up. He comes back 1,000 years later. They unchain him for a final test. And most people are still going to, even though they've had 1,000 years of perfect human life on a paradise planet, which is, another part of their theology that's absolutely whack. Half of the human population is going to be like, no, we're going to go with Satan again. This is their theology. This is what they think. It's just a bizarre, absolutely none of it's biblical. Just made up out of whole cloth by some, severely, I think, mentally unstable folks back in the late 1800s. Incredible.
Well, I always thought the 144,000, that's all that was going to be saved. And so if there's 8 million JWs, that means all but 144,000 are going to be, oblivion, sent to oblivion. So why does anybody stay there? I mean, I know you can't say which ones there are, right?
There's two options.
Right.
There's two options. There's two ways to be saved. You can be one of the anointed, which is the 144,000 humans. Out of all humans that have ever existed, God is going to choose 144,000, and most of them are going to be JWs.
Yep.
And then you have, so that's the heavenly hope, they call it. And then you have the earthly hope, which is after Armageddon, after God and his angels have slaughtered the planet, right? The JWs that are left, right, will be able to basically repopulate and reconfigure the earth, and so that it becomes a paradise like it was supposed to be back in the day with Adam and Eve, right? All goes back to Adam and Eve, mom and dad.
That explains all the people that knock on my door once in a while with their
exactly. They're there to hopefully, they want to reach what they call honest-hearted ones, which is kind of a insult wrapped in a compliment. If I don't enjoy your theology, I'm not honest-hearted. Very nice. But yeah, they're looking for those ones who will respond and take the virus, basically. They're spreading the JHVH1 entity via language and printed propaganda, and if it catches you at a weak moment, they love to exploit that.
Yeah, if you're in a crisis or anything, I mean, I've joined a couple of cults when I was young. It just happens. You're in a weak place and they catch you at the right time. Yeah, for the audience, JHVH1, of course, is your name for this demiurge, this virus algorithm vampiric entity that really does exist, and exists is a very open-ended
I consider it to be absolutely existent. You can see it. You can see its existence through its works.
Right.
Just like the good book says, you can tell a thing by what it does. Actions speak louder than words. So we have the culture of the Jehovah's Witnesses, and then we have the law of the Jehovah's Witnesses, and the culture and the law are often different, but they're all designed to basically feed this thing. Right, feed this thing a degree of suffering from each individual. I believe it's absolutely existent, and I've gone to war with it.
Yeah, and I think it's the best way to
writing
do it.
drill.
Yeah, because you can put out all the debunking Jehovah Witness YouTube videos from the New Atheist movement. It's not going to stop.
Sure,
you really do some sort of, like I said, sigil or magic to take it on its own terms.
Yeah,
the thing is eternal. This thing is powerful, and it works at a different dimensional level for all practical purposes.
Yeah. The funny thing about Jehovah is that basically he wasn't even the top tier. He wasn't even the top tier god in the Mesopotamian pantheon. in which he initially, was birthed.
Right.
He was basically a lower tier storm god. He was the Jewish Thor. He had a very small territory, basically the mountains of Sinai, where he famously, dropped the Mosaic law on the Israelites.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, in and around that area was his place. He was a mountain storm god. Impressive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when the Israelites sat there at the base of Mount Sinai and the JHVH1 entity spoke, everyone shat their collective loincloth,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it was, to hear it clear its higher dimensional throat. Very upsetting to humans,
Yeah.
right? That's why they said to Moses, "You go up, you be the representative, you go up into the mountain, right, and talk to this thing, and then come down and tell us what it wants, because we're not doing that again."
Yeah.
You can read that in Exodus.
Yeah, and then
the
that
whole
creature
account.
got all this free food for thousands of years, which is
Yeah.
fine. That's what these entities do.
Yeah. Well, it's the first law of the universe, right, Miguel? It's like everybody hungry.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter
everything
what
has to eat everything to survive. Yeah.
Doesn't matter what you are, you got to have something on your plate. So yeah, taking away Jehovah's food, crippling him as much as possible, getting folks to read drill, because reading is the motive power behind the curse, right, that I've developed. So that's why I like coming on podcasts like these, because I know folks are probably going to pop out and read it. So
I highly advise it. And then because when we talk about logic, I mean, the Jehovah Witness have been wrong about the end of the world, and of course,
many
broken the spell. That won't break
many times.
How many times?
How many times? I want to say 14 in total. But there were some absolute famous ones. There was the 1975 was the latest.
Oh.
That or at least that was the biggest one. That was the people selling their homes and businesses and going out and standing on hilltops waiting for it, on a particular day in 1975, which they then gaslit their membership to think that it was had only been a few radical thinkers who had come up with this idea, even though there's, evidence to this day. You can find the old copies of the Awake and Watchtower where they were saying things like "stay alive till 75," things like that, because they thought that was going to be Armageddon, right? If you could just, stick it out until 1975. I was born in 1972. So you had to see that my father was basically, the father of a 3-year-old boy at that time.
3 years to live. Wow.
Yeah. And, he basically made the choices he made. Fascinating stuff.
Incredible. And when you left, how was that? Again, it's in the book for the audience. Was it a quick "I'm out of here"? What was the process of you divorcing yourself from?
It was a longish process, but basically I couldn't, like I said before, I couldn't countenance Armageddon as a thing. I realized it was non-biblical. It wasn't a true teaching. So that's what I went out on. But honestly, I wanted out. I found some esoteric reasons that I could give to the elders to say, look, I'm out of here. I can't in good conscience continue with this endeavor. This is not how I think God wants me to live my life, so on and so forth. The platitudes. And, they basically let me go without too much fuss. I got out fairly cleanly. This was, again, back in, this shows how long this stuff lasts. This was back in 1997, 1998.
Wow.
So I was in my late 20s. I'm in my early 50s now. But yeah, I got disillusioned with them and left. And it was interesting because the way I left, by disassociating myself instead of getting kicked out for sinning, right, and being shunned by my family, I basically just backed off and, left that way, because I'd seen the examples of other folks who had been, disfellowshipped, which is their word for their shunning practice. They shun their members. I'm currently shunned by my father, but that didn't happen until many years later after I had left, right? Because it became clear to them, as I showed in the book, it became clear to them that I was not coming back to the Watchtower Society, right? That I was in fact an apostate and a rebel of the first water, right? And all of that they basically said, well, now we have to shun you. I'm like, well, that's fantastic. This was about 13 years ago. And it was actually around the birth of my first boy. Yeah. And
do they feel they have divine right to pass judgment on people like this? I mean, where does their right to judge people come from in their minds?
It comes from the scriptures, right? It's all scripturally based, is what they say. Of course, their scriptures are their scriptures, and no Bible scholar worth their salt would ever say that the New World Translation of the Holy Bible is a good one.
Yeah, I've heard it's heavily modified.
Oh, heavily modified. You can go on deep dives on the YouTube about that as well. Yeah. But yeah, they changed a lot. Which I believe there's a scripture saying you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
Not supposed to add or take away anything, but they've done both.
Well, they depend on revelation heavily, right? And did they change?
Oh, and I was a revelation wonk when I was a young man. I loved that stuff. That was probably my entry into weird fiction, honestly. Right?
Yeah, great. Yeah.
John's Apocalypse. It was just
what is going on because here? It is Star Lords and creatures coming out of the depths. It's got everything, man.
Oh yeah,
exactly. Yeah, no, it's good stuff. But yeah, they depend on revelation. They depend on a lot of prophecies that they've misread in Daniel, Isaiah. Yeah, they're biblical literalists, right? So they have to find a way to make these wonky narratives fit. Right, and Revelation is one of their go-to reasons for Armageddon. Right, they don't recognize the historical context of the book. They don't recognize, the layers of metaphor. They don't. They think it's all literal in some way, and it's all going to come to pass with Armageddon.
Well, did they think that
we all die?
Did they think there were witnesses way back, in the 1st century AD or whatever, or whatever?
They say that they copied, they model themselves on the 1st century Christian congregation.
Right.
That was another thing that got me going, because that got me leaving, because I learned about Gnosticism pretty much soon after I left. The idea that there were these other Christians that I hadn't heard about, that no one had told me about these other Christians with their
Gospel of Thomas. What the hell is
with
this?
Their ideas? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, what a mess. And yeah, I think obviously there's many themes that you deal with this book, and again we get into the father theme. And we've talked about it. I think, no matter how sophisticated we want to get, we go back to Freud and Jung. It all goes back to mommy and daddy issues. The entire universe goes back to that archetype that gets clouded with the wrong image, whether it's the Gnostics with the Demiurge and Sophia and their issues, we're all children of this terrible god, or the Greeks and Zeus, or the Christians and Jehovah. It's all a big mess, and I think it just kind of emanates all the way down to us human beings trying to heal or see through the cloud to get the real archetype, and also, learn to forgive and heal our timelines, because your dad was simply trapped in that virus with his grandfather, and it probably goes back in this.
Yeah, it goes back 3 generations for me.
Yeah, that's a lot of trauma that gets passed down epigenetically. Yeah,
absolutely. No, it's like I say in the book, I lost my father before I was ever born.
Good one. Yeah.
Because he was deeply, indoctrinated as a child himself. right? And his entire life has been led as a Jehovah's Witness. You know, I escaped, and I've had an entire other lifetime, you know, as not that, as many other things, and that's been, you know, also revelatory for me. But yeah, to know my father as a victim is hard for me, though, because so much of my issues with him are like, you can't possibly have thought this way, you know? How? Based on what I know of you, how did you come to these conclusions, and that this behavior in particular and these statements were, you know, somehow righteous and good and loving? You know, just bizarre. I can't I think there has to be complicity within the subject for the virus to take hold on some level, right? JHVH1 has to see something of itself in you, right? For it to lock in and start to perform its drainings.
Or
So
fear
that's
is
how I
the
see it.
mind killer. I think your dad was
Absolutely.
just afraid of something. I don't know. Be wrong, see that his life is a lie. I think people like you and I, Scott, we at some point we saw our lives are really lies and we're fine with it.
Yeah.
But some people just can't do that.
That's true. That's true. Well, it's hard to see the provisionary nature of our lives. You know, it's a difficult thing to grok when you're presented with it. So, yeah.
And he had some. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No. You go.
Yeah, but I mean, it's hard because he chose. Well, you were already ostracized, and that's hard, right? I mean, you're losing your life, your past, the community. It's in a way that's the threat of cults, is that they throw you out in the cold, and it's almost like a death.
It is
prism, and again, fear. It's that fear, but your dad, the idea probably that he would not talk to you and your children, that this male lineage, he'd rather just cut it off and never go to it and choose his religion, his, you know, which gives him order and all that. I mean, I've thought that way in my life, you know. It's easy not to think and be a sheep because it's a hard world of chaos. But he cut you guys off completely, and I'm sure that was hard, right?
Yeah, it continues to be hard. You know, it's a wound that unfortunately kind of gets made fresh every day, because I mean, the guy lives 5 minutes away from me. You know, a 5-minute drive away.
Wow.
You know, tomorrow's Easter Sunday. He could be over. You know, he could be over enjoying my house and my yard, and, you know, my hot tub and his grandchildren, and, you know, just having a fine old time, you know, with his firstborn son. But instead, he's sitting over there in his condominium by the water, you know, tired and getting older. It's a shame, crying shame.
Yeah, it's brutal, and I mean, I know, and he had some also weird ideas. Didn't he say that UFOs was Satan coming from the future to do something? I mean, in other
I think we glitched a bit.
Yeah, we did.
Oh, there we go.
There you go. Yeah, it's like the virus is trying to stop us. But yeah, his idea on Satan sending UFOs from the future.
Yeah, who knows where that came from? You know, I don't doubt that when he was a younger man, he read a lot of weird fiction. You know, he probably read Astounding Stories and you know, all the old pulp magazines. I wouldn't doubt that at all. You know, it's probably where he got some of his wacky ideas, because they certainly weren't there in the JW ideas.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so, but, you know, trying to make sense of the world is what he was doing, I guess.
Yeah, it still is. God, yeah, and then the idea of when your mom died. Well, there's a lot of very powerful scenes. Hard to read, but lessons, about blaming you for your mother's death, which was
that is certainly a thing that happened. You know, but again, at that point, at that point, I don't think I was talking with my father. I think I was talking with Jehovah.
Mm-hmm.
The entity.
Taking over.
When these things come out of my father's mouth, it's like I find it hard to believe that it's coming from a human. That it doesn't sound human. It's inhuman. It has different goals, shall we say? Right? It has different things that it wants to accomplish in the world. It has autonomy in the world through the medium of my father,
Mm-hmm.
right? So whenever I would listen to him and hear this voice, I'd be like, "It's not you talking." Convinced of it, absolutely convinced of it, because I can remember when it used to talk through me.
Of course,
right? Because I can remember that experience of being like, I'm saying these things that I've heard, and I'm repeating them, verbatim practically. What's going on here? Maybe I've always been wired that way, but it was just, I would get this disconnect in my head where I was like, this isn't right. There's something real off here. Yeah.
Yeah, and you, of course, are a threat to this being because it has to get rid of you.
I hope
has
so.
To keep you away.
I hope
has
so.
To keep you away from the flock, from its field of loosh, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. I mean, would I like Jehovah's Witnesses to read this book? Yes, very much so. Do I think it's likely, considering the content and the way it's presented? Probably not. But it's not really for Jehovah's Witnesses, right? I'm not going after them per se. I'm going after their God. Another podcaster asked me once whether or not I had fear that there would be reprisals. Would I suffer an attack from this thing? I honestly don't know. I'm of a couple of different minds about it. I haven't noticed anything yet, but then it's an acausal being, and I'm using acausal means to attempt to destroy it. So there was an interesting development. The book has multiple targets, which are all essentially, father related. So Jehovah God, the Watchtower Society, my father. But I also, in one chapter, I list sort of some auxiliary targets, right? Some other folks who had basically deserved my revenge, just to be blunt about it. And then I learned that about 2 months after Drill was published, one of these individuals, a cousin of mine from Idaho, died suddenly, and from the most bizarre thing, mad cow disease, variant Khrushchev-Jacobs disease, or whatever it's called.
Wow, that's
the kind that humans get. The kind that humans get from eating infected beef product that has
that's an old disease. That's like 90s. I hadn't heard about it.
I know. So bizarre. And he got this and was dead within 3 weeks. And then I was reading through Drill and I was like, oh, I named him specifically. Some people I didn't name, but most, one of them was him, considering his involvement in my event, in the events of the book. So now I kind of have to own that in some way, right? Did Drill do this? Did it use, acausal means to, ensure that at some point in the past, my cousin, ate this stuff so that he would die around this time? Who knows?
Yeah. Who knows?
Who knows?
Like but Morrison's The Invincibles, where it came true to him.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. He manifested a lot of the disease that Invincibles was
King Maud
seeking to cure. Yeah. Got to get back into the Invisibles. I should reread that. It's been too long.
Well, yeah, I was going to bring up a quote too, but again, it reminds me of this genre. But again, I know it sounds strange, but when I was reading your book, I kept thinking of all the novels, Kurt Vonnegut's Breakfast for Champions. And it's one of my top 20 novels. It's just brilliant to read. I mean, what a mind. But in the novel, there's all this craziness, and Vonnegut is dealing with all these issues, social issues, and insanity, and how destructive our culture is. You know, only Vonnegut would do very satirical science fiction. But in the middle of the novel, as everything's falling apart, the writer Kurt Vonnegut decides he's going to jump like a Deus ex machina and stop everything and say, all right, I need to fix this novel. And he explains to the protagonist, look, let me tell you the truth. I'm the creator. You are all fiction, but you are alive, but you don't have free will. I am creating you and manipulating. And then eventually I'll press you and you will be a book. You will never have free will. Only the reader has free will. So, and Vonnegut's sort of like, well, we are kind of part of the divine intelligence, but Vonnegut is kind of playing the demiurge. It's like he's admitting things. And then he turns around and the protagonist, what was the name of the protagonist? Trout. I forgot his name yet. Right.
Kilgore
Trout. Suddenly the joke is on him because Kilgore Trout turns into his father at the last second. And his father's screaming from saying, make me young again, because Vonnegut had his issues with his father, but it was different. It was the Great Depression that crushed his father. You know, religion, Scott, will destroy you, but we forget poverty will also destroy you, especially if you're a man and you can't provide for your family. And it basically, he lost his father's sanity because of depression. And Vonnegut is also doing the same thing. He's trying to write a letter to his father at that last minute, who's stuck forever in the Great Depression, just like your father is forever stuck in the Jehovah Witness. And I think hopefully my father's no longer stuck in the alcohol. But so I think it's that's why it reminded you. And I kept thinking of other love letters, like I think Philip K. Dick, his book, The Transmigration of Timothy Archer. I think that's a love letter to his mom because the character's female. And Dick was abused by his mother. That whatever psychical damage he had beyond losing Jane was his mother, just like David Bowie. These very harsh women that broke them. Didn't give him any love as children. Basically gave him no love at all. And that's why Dick and Bowie ended up being so, well, the space cadets that they were, and terrible with female relationships and all. But I think that's Dick's kind of letter to his mom. So I found it interesting, the sort of lattice of ways we are trying to figure out the mother and father archetype, right?
Yeah, well, as a father myself now, and these concerns are always close to the top of my mind. I really want to make sure that my kids get the best, care they can get from us. Guess we'll see how we do.
Do we have free will, or is somebody writing the script? I guess we'll find out. What do you think, Vance? Do you have a question or a remark?
Yeah, here's a good one for you. So far from what I've heard you say, the drill is, a means by which you want to at least disable, if not destroy, JHVH1, right? But what if JHVH1 is actually the originator of this universe? And there's some evidence for that, since when you look at the way the universe is, and look, even the animal kingdom destroys itself, and so forth. So in that case, is he destroyable? That's my question.
Yeah, that's a good one. I don't know. I'm taking a crack at it.
Don't destroy us in the meantime. We will poof and a cloud of smoke. Thanks, Scott.
I'll try to keep my aim true, basically, is what I've done with drill. I don't know. Is he destroyable? I'm not convinced that. Well, I make distinction in drill between JHVH1 and God, whatever it might be. Right. I try to make a distinction. I think that these are basically lesser gods. I think they're not too far from humanity on the scale of intelligent beings in the universe. I don't think they're very far above us at all. But as autonomous mental creations, that we have made. At the end of the day, I think Jehovah was constructed, and took on a life of its own, and now has a pretty good gig going here in 2025. I think that aspect of the, if he is an aspect of the Godhead, as it were, or a lesser Archon, then I think possibly, we can at least do some damage.
Yeah, if he was he or she or it
sure
was a egregorial type intelligence with us as the neurons, right? Then it's possible, I suppose, to eliminate the patterns within that structure.
Yeah.
But there's still the universe, the physical, matter, energy, space, time universe to deal with.
Sure.
And whatever created that. And the Gnostics, I believe, thought that Jehovah created that universe as well. That was the basis of my question. But I guess we will see. What would the universe be like without JHVH1, assuming he's, as you imagine, the egregorial form?
Gosh. Well, what would Earth be like, I think?
Yeah, what would Earth be like?
Well, there'd be fewer Jehovah's Witnesses. And I honestly think that's a good thing, to have fewer cultists in our midst.
Sure. Disease? You think disease would go away? I mean, all these other things, bad weather, whatever.
Oh, who could say? Hard to know. Hard to know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Very good.
Yeah,
thanks.
One battle at a time, and you're doing this because, again, like you said, hate is part of the virus. It's what infects. You wrote this book out of love, or what do you think was moving you through your
Well, love is at its very core, but it's like a tiny little seed. It's what was my love was my love for my father and for Jehovah and all were reduced. We're reduced quite a bit. So now it's just a little fraction, a little shard at the core of it. The rest of it is hate. It's quite a hate-filled book, I'm afraid to say. Like I said, God help me if I ever write anything like it again. But my love was transmuted. My love was transmuted through the actions of this God and the people that revere it. My love was transmuted to hate. And, to the same extent that my love was huge, I had a very great love for my father. I think when it got shifted alchemically, into hate, well, gosh, it's a huge and transforming sort of feeling, which I hope I've mitigated somewhat with the novel.
For sure, yeah. Like you said, sometimes it's an exorcism. Sometimes it's a confession. Sometimes it's part of the alchemical change, and it will lead you where it needs to lead you. Yeah, you were talking about Grant Morrison. My favorite work for his is the one graphic novel nobody ever read, Nameless. But there is a scene that I love.
I read it, sir.
Really? One of the few. It's
I read it.
And Grant Morrison admits, when you read the notes, that was his exorcism of Jehovah. I mean, he's very specific. This God, and he says the same thing. He's real. He's terrorized the minds of people for thousands of years. There's only one solution. He has to be killed. He is real. I mean, Grant doesn't. He's not mincing words. And here is the part that I love. One of my favorite. It's very quotable. Let's see, add to stage. And he writes, now consider the possibility that we've always had a disembodied alien life form living among us. Invisible, yet able to occupy minds and alter them. It hides in plain sight everywhere. This mind boasts of its own omnipotence. It informs us that we are no more than submissive instruments of its will, then deliberately wills us to defy its rules. All the while it vows to punish every preordained breach of those rules, however brief or minor, with eternal agonizing torture in a cosmic concentration camp. What names might we give such an omnipresent evil? And then the protagonist goes, God. You're talking about God. Remember that one, Scott?
I do recall it. Yeah. I think Grant Morrison has also said that, anything that we can do to eradicate this, entity from our mind space is welcome.
It is.
It's welcome.
It is.
So,
and it's almost like it wants you to disobey, because that's where the game really happened. Like a cat, playing with it's like, oh, sure, break the rules, and then I'll get you out. But then watch out, because you'll be mine sooner or later. It's something, and I felt Nameless was also Grant's sigil or exorcism or whatever, like yours, to finally move away from this being.
That's the goal.
Yeah, it's awesome. And the other thing about your novel just isn't about, well, I mean, that's one of it, but it's also how you've dealt with other parts of your life. It has a great climax of you going through the red door and meeting this being and so forth. But I like the fact that you connected yourself to Hermes. As you say, you deliver mail for the Canada Post, as you call it.
Canada Post.
But you consider
I'm a mailman.
Hermes. But it is Hermes. In a way, you are tapping into Hermes.
Yeah, I've been working with Hermes as my patron god for, I want to say 3.5 years now. It's made some things better and some things worse, but it's all in all been to a huge benefit overall. To have each morning my prayer to Hermes, endows me with the qualities that I require to complete the job, which is, as I'm aging, is getting more grueling. It's I walk 18 kilometers a day. That's not an insignificant amount of clicks per day, 5 days a week. It takes it out of me. So it's good having Hermes there to catch my feet before I fall, which happens a lot. Tripping on steps and what have you. So Hermes always catches me before I really take a tumble.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been talking on the show. This is the age of Hermes, and he's one of my patrons too.
Yeah.
So this is the age of the trickster, as Western culture transforms into whatever the hell it's going to be in its next incarnation. But Hermes will be there.
Yeah, I like that, Miguel. I like that a lot.
And also, too, you were also a Bigfoot hunter once.
Oh yeah, I was a teenage Sasquatch hunter. Sasquatch hunter. Of course, out here on the West Coast, it's pretty easy to just take off for the weekend into the woods and imagine you're after the Bigfoot. But I've seen some things. I've seen tracks. I've seen things that would curl your hairs a little bit. It's an odd aspect of life out here. Is that just up in the hills there might be a thing. So many people have reported it. All reports are absolutely consistent. It has been happening for over 2 centuries, these reports. What the hell is it? I wrote about this in my first novel, Stonefish, which was, entirely about the Sasquatch as Archons, basically, as, creatures that could inhabit our reality, but, were just real enough to leave tracks when they wanted to. Just real enough to show up on camera for like 5 seconds. Just long enough to, really what's going on with the Sasquatch. But that's the tale for another time.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, I mean, I haven't had the pleasure of being up to like Vancouver in that area, but when I went to Portland, I was like, my God, everything's about Sasquatch and Bigfoot in the city. They have a pride about it too. It's hilarious.
Of course.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's our own little PNW mascot.
That's because he shuns us all, and we want him to talk to us, but he won't. See, it's
That's
like the
true. No,
JW.
well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, Bigfoot knows people are crap. He doesn't want to hang out with us.
He's smart.
Not good enough for you, huh, Bigfoot?
Incredible. I think I saw a super chat there, Vance.
Yes, you did. Yes,
just-
you did.
Let me just pull
And
it
here
up.
it is.
There it is. Thank you for that, Kevin. Does drill target all forms
Yeah.
of the JH virus or just the Jehovah's Witness strain? That's a good one. Is he just a patron of that cult, or?
I would say specifically the Jehovah's Witness strain. Yeah. But by virtue of that, it has, effectiveness against all, controlling God forms.
It's like the flu vaccine, right?
Yeah.
What about the Seventh-day Adventists? They're pretty close, aren't they? Pretty much.
Yeah, they're close. They're very close in their belief systems to the Jehovah's Witnesses, but yeah.
We get a twofer there.
Well, it all came out of what they called the Great Disappointment back in the 1800s, right? When what was his name? Miller, I think the guy's name was.
Right?
Yeah. So Jehovah's Witnesses and the Seventh-day Adventists, they're millenarian organizations. They believe the end is coming, and there's a timeline, and we're all on it.
Sooner or later, they're going to be right. But
yeah.
Humanity, indeed. So awesome. Well, this has been a great discussion. We are at the end. Again, for the audience, it's a good read. It is hard at times. It's very emotional, very powerful. Again, Scott lays it all on the table from so many issues and so many of his journey through this Archon mind parasite and other parts of his life. So is there anything else you want the reader to get out of it, or anything else you want to mention about drill?
Well, hopefully they get a cracking good read out of it, Miguel.
Well written.
That's what I'm hoping for. The kind of. I was so happy when you said that you consumed it in 2 sessions. That's impressive.
Yeah, and I'm not a fiction. I even told you when I'm so out of the loop reading fiction because of this, this podcast and
sure
stuff. So it's been years since I read a book of fiction, and I was like, "Oh, this is great. I'm going to sit down and just,
That's what I hope for the reader. Sort of a consuming experience, which they're caught up in it and can, upload their energy into the working itself.
That's what they'll get for sure. Any last questions from you, Vance?
Not really. I think I got all my questions answered, the important ones at least. And
awesome.
I wish you success with your campaign.
Thank you.
Because we can all use a little bit less Jehovah at least.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I was going to say what you ought to do is make up some drill pamphlets and pass them around to Gnostics, and Gnostics can knock on people's door, and
Sort of our Lord and Savior Sophia kind of thing.
Yeah, we could do that, something like that.
We can call it the Crotch Towers.
Right.
Lord have money. I know I do have those Cthulhu pamphlets, like the Jack T. Chick tracks.
Right.
For Cthulhu to convert. Those are they're so good.
They're funny.
They really are. So awesome. I have it on the show notes, but where do you want to send people to get the book or find out more about you?
Well, if you want to get cool swag from the publisher, you order from the publisher, and that's wordhorde.com. That's WORDHORDE.com. And it'll be there in the book section. But if you're fond of the Amazon or Goodreads or B&B or wherever fine books are sold, you're going to be able to find Drill.
And your personal website?
Yeah, my personal website is scottrjoneswriter.com. I think. Let me double check.
How often do you go there, huh?
Yeah, no, that's what it is. scottrjoneswriter.com. And there they will find all of my books. Going back a few years.
Well, check it out. Check it out. Good stuff, people. Well, we are at the end. For the audience, thanks for being here. It's been a great conversation. I hope you've learned something, and I hope you're better prepared to fight the mind virus. I guess that's the last question. What advice do you have for people to make sure that this virus doesn't get into them, or that they can maybe check that they're not completely in it? Any advice? I know you're a magician, you're an author. Any advice?
Just critical thinking on a certain level is necessary to not get infected by this thing. But honestly, don't engage with Jehovah's Witnesses, I think, is the best advice I could give, because that's
social
how
distancing.
that's how you get that. That's how they'll give you a good nick for your trouble, and then you'll find infection on some level, because on some level, there's a reason Jehovah's Witnesses exists, and that's because the narrative is gripping on a certain level, right? People take to it. So yeah, you gotta be careful of what you put in your head. Saying that, you should put Drill in there.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Awesome. Well, first I'd like to say, Vance, thanks for keeping us company tonight.
Yeah, thanks, Vance.
You bet. I was glad to learn about all this, and again, good luck with the campaign.
Thanks, Vance. Good to meet you.
Same here.
For sure. And for the audience, I'll have the audio version out. Of course, if you're watching live, as soon as we say I hit the unrecord button, you'll have the replay on Rumble, YouTube. But the audio version will be out. I'm going to wait till Monday because I don't want to. It's a serious subject, and my wife will kill me if I put something out on Easter. So, it will be out first thing Monday morning for the podcast version on all your usual podcast providers. Yeah, please support this venture, buy the book, support all your alternative creators, and of course those in the niche Gnostic worlds. But Scott, thanks for coming on the show, and really enjoyed it. And good luck with everything.
Thanks a lot, guys. That was great. Good to talk with you.
Likewise. And for everybody else, enjoy the rest of your weekend, and get some rest, and avoid those mind parasites and keep drilling.